Hi, welcome to the Poscast. I am Joe Posnanski, and with me is Michael Shore. Michael, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
You are so welcome. All right. So, look, this is obviously an emergency podcast, but the emergency is that the last emergency podcast didn't include any of the emergencies that have happened since we recorded it.
Yeah, let me explain what I think happened here.
Explain this, please.
We on this podcast have talked very frequently about how bad we are at podcasting,
That's
right?
right. That's correct.
And we're bad in almost every way you can be bad. But one of the ways that we're bad is that we never do things in a timely fashion.
That's right.
When we do things in a timely fashion, we often deliberately or accidentally kind of screw up the thing that we're supposed to be doing. We'll say that there's an emergency because, Shohei Ohtani did XYZ, and then we wait to talk about Shohei Ohtani to like minute 52 or whatever, right?
That's right. That's right.
So I believe what's happened now is that we have created a self-fulfilling prophecy, or it's like the secret where we put something out into the universe and now it's coming back to us. And and so now what happens is when we do a podcast, we almost always do it right before something very important happens.
That's right.
And then we release it right after that important thing has happened. And so people listen to it and they assume that they're going to hear us talking about the important thing,
Yes.
and instead we don't talk about the important thing. And so we had this conversation about the state of baseball roughly coming up on halfway through the year, and we talked at length for some reason, I don't know why. We talked at
Yes.
length about the San Francisco Giants.
That's right.
And specifically, I said the words no one on that team can hit, which was true at the moment that we said it. Then we finished recording it. Then
Yep.
later, I think that day, or maybe the next morning, I can't remember. Rafael Devers was traded from my favorite team to the San Francisco Giants
That's right.
in one of the biggest and most unexpected trades in baseball in a while. Like it's been a
Oh yeah.
while
Yeah.
since
I
there's
can't remember the last one that kind of jumped at us like this one did.
right. So then our podcast comes out and we start talking about the San Francisco Giants. And anyone who's listened to this podcast knows that I'm a Red Sox fan. And then we just talk about the Giants and how they can't hit for like an hour. And then it ends. So now here we are. And let me say a couple other things before we get started here, because there's multiple emergencies. The other thing that happened that we have to talk about is the Lakers were sold for $10 billion,
Yes, they were.
which is very funny. It's there's a lot of very funny things about this. But sticking with the Red Sox endeavors and the Giants for a second, uh, I I have a cold, and I want to apologize to everyone for my nasally voice.
Sure.
Uh, uh, but in the words of the great Dan Jenkins, you got to play hurt. You know what I
You got to
mean?
play hurt. That's exactly right.
And B, there are so many things that have already been said now about the Devers trade.
Yes.
So many people who are good at podcasting who who really who recorded and released podcasts after the trade happened.
Right. Actually, timely. Yeah. Releases.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
we're gonna cover some ground that many other people have covered. But I think what we should consider this as is a roundup. This is a roundup of all of the things that we now the dust is settled. We have some objectivity now, so we're going to
Yes.
analyze. This is going to be a cold-hearted, calculated summary and analysis of a lot of other people's analyses of the situation.
That's right. Yeah. No, I think that's right. I by the way, the podcast that we called an emergency podcast that we recorded before, probably minutes before the Devers trade,
Yeah,
and talked about things. It might be the best one we've ever done. That might be
it is a
because
true high point for us.
because people thought it was a gag.
Yeah.
People thought like, oh yeah, they're just gonna eventually. But no, do not ever think that we know what we're doing enough that we are
the
capable.
the line between a gag and incompetence is really thin.
It's very thin.
Yeah.
It's razor thin. Yeah, we have multiple emergencies to talk about. You mentioned the Lakers. Obviously, the Tampa Bay Rays have also apparently been sold to a Jacksonville home builder or something who
Sure.
apparently has no money. Like that's going to be a very funny.
What is the last moment in American history where a large business deal went down in the state of Florida that wasn't super shady? I don't know that it's ever happened.
It's yeah, probably like the original, the like before Florida was a state. I think once
Yeah.
Florida became a state,
Yeah,
yeah, every
the
deal
second that people that the white European settlers drifted into Florida, everything got real unpleasant and real shady.
Here's a question: has there been a Florida deal made in the last 150 years that did not somewhere in the story have the phrase Jacksonville home builder? There,
Yeah.
every deal.
Before we talk about that, let's also note that the Tampa Bay Rays, who are currently playing their home games in a minor league stadium.
Not even a I guess it's
Sorry,
minor
I
league also, but it's
apologize.
mostly
Yes,
a spring
worse
training
worse than a
stadium
minor league stadium, a spring training stadium owned by another team in their own division,
named for their owner of
named
the
for
other
the
team.
previous owner of that franchise. Uh, that team is 1.5 games out of first place right now.
Well, this is an emergency. It may be a happy emergency, but is an emergency. And I'll you know what we'll get to Devers 32 minutes in like we're supposed to for emergencies.
Okay.
I have an original emergency, and it is this. I think if Aaron Judge doesn't hit 400, the Yankees stink. That's what I think. I think unless Aaron Judge is hitting better than any human being has ever hit in Major League Baseball, the Yankees are not very good.
Well, so in the last whatever it is, 6 days, 7 days, the Red Sox took what it was 2 out of 3, I guess,
They
against
swept them.
they
No,
swept
no,
them. Yeah,
no. They swept them. You might remember that because that was right before they traded their
they
franchise
traded
player.
Rafael Devers. Yeah, and not only did they sweep them, they swept them scoring like 1 run a game.
Oh yeah.
It was 2-0, 3-1, 1-0 or something.
Wasn't the last game 2-0 and one of the runs was a Devers homer? Wasn't that
That's correct. The second run was an opposite field homer by Rafael
yeah.
Devers, who's no longer on the team. The Garrett Crochet in that 3-game series had the worst start of any of the 3 starting pitchers because he was the only one who gave up a run.
A run, yeah,
So he
exactly
was like
right.
7 innings and 1 run, or 8 innings, 1 run, whatever.
No, that was he went.
Oh,
He was going to throw the complete game. He gave up
right,
the
and then he
one
gave
dead
up
pitch
the
to Judge
to
because Judge is the
Judge.
only guy in that team that can play.
And then they went home and they played the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and got swept at
We're not very
home,
good.
who are
We're
not
not
very
very good.
good, and they
No.
lost 3 straight to them and scored 0 runs. I think they went 29 straight innings without scoring a run. It was
That's
like
right.
the last 7 innings against the Red Sox, I think, and then the first 2 games against the Angels, and then a couple innings in Game 3. And yeah, like 10 days ago, all of the screaming headlines in the sports journalism world were, can Aaron Judge hit 400?
Yeah, it's impossible,
And
but can he do it? Right?
and today
Yeah.
he's hitting like 366, which is still outrageous, but also 1 10-day slump. That's why that's why no one can hit 400.
Right. That's right.
If you slump for 10 days, it's over, because he would now have to hit like 448 for the rest of the year,
Yeah.
which is impossible, right? So he like a lot of guys on that team who were off to fantastic starts have come back down to earth. Volpe's OPS is like 725 now or something.
Volpe, yeah, struggling.
Goldschmidt had 1,000 OPS. He's now below 800. The Trent Grisham, who, much to the chagrin of San Diego Padres fans everywhere, had 1,000 OPS for a month and a half. He's now down at below 800. And
Yeah.
like their lineup is still really good. Like everybody in their lineup has a 7-something OPS or higher, which is pretty rare these days.
Yep.
But we've known this for a while. This was the Giants when Bonds was around in some years. Is like the thing that made them win was that they had a guy in the middle of their lineup who was a video game cheat code.
That's
And
right.
when that video game cheat code becomes merely the best hitter in baseball instead of the best hitter who has ever walked the earth at any moment
Right.
in time,
Yep.
suddenly the whole lineup looks a lot different. And And I don't think that they're gonna be this bad for much longer. They're gonna recover. They'll still make the playoffs. They'll
Well,
probably win the division, blah, 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 blah. But it's wild what could happen in this game that we love so much that has 162 games in the season. You can have a team by the way, this literally happened last year, right? In fact, I think the last 2 years, the Yankees got off to these crazy hot starts. They were blowing people away. The stories in May were like, is this the best baseball team ever assembled in the history of baseball? And then the answer is like, no, they were just all hot at the same time, and they got off to a really good start. And now they merely look like what we thought they were, which was a playoff team instead of an unbeatable, unstoppable offensive force.
well, and it's again all Judge. All right, the last 7 games, they're 1-6 in the last 7 games, but they've scored a total of 1, 2, 5, 7 runs in the last 7 games. They're
Yeah.
averaging 1 run a game. They've been shut out 3 times.
Yeah.
Yep, 3 times. The one game they won 1-0. And Judge is hitting 083 with a bunch of strikeouts. That's Aaron Judge. Like that's part of it too. Like
That's
we all
part of
know. Like
everybody. Like
it is. But Judge particularly he's a strikeout guy,
yeah.
even when he's hitting like crazy. The reason he was hitting 400 is because when he hits the ball in play, it's absurd. He hits 500 when he hits the ball. Especially if you count home runs. So this is inevitable. What amazes me is I don't believe this team, even though they do have other good players, they don't have anybody that can pick him up. They like
Yeah.
if Aaron Judge is not playing like like you said, on like otherworldly baseball, not even just MVP baseball, otherworldly
No,
baseball,
all-time best season ever
all time
baseball.
best season ever baseball. They're just not that good.
Well,
They've been fine.
they had in those first 2 months, there was a stat, I think sometime in late May. It was like Paul Goldschmidt off of left-handed pitchers rather, was hitting like 548.
Yeah,
Like it was in the mid fives was his batting average. And granted, that's probably whatever, 45 at bats or something. But the point is like it wasn't just that Judge was hitting that well. It's that a bunch of other guys were in their 2-month hot streaks all at the same
sure.
time. And now
They're
they're
probably
in
feeding off a Judge
yeah,
too, though.
they're feeding off a Judge, but also just like one like, good hitters over the course of a 6-month season will have 2 months where they're really good, 2 months where they're really bad, and 2 months where they're okay. And that's
Yep.
not always grouped together perfectly, but like
No.
that's sort of the way it goes, right? So Paul Goldschmidt, who's 37 years old and won an MVP fairly recently, like a couple
Not
years
too
ago,
long ago.
right?
3
3
years ago.
years ago.
3 years. Yep.
So yeah, he's going to have 2 months where he can hit pretty well, and he hit extraordinarily well for the first 2 months of the season. And so what you had was a bunch of guys who were playing the best they're going to play all year, and Judge being an unprecedented force. And so when Judge shifts back to just being, the best hitter in baseball, and
Right.
Paul Goldschmidt shifts from these are the 2 months I'm great to these are the 2 months I suck, and Volpe, same thing, and Grisham, same thing.
Same
If you look
thing.
at
Yeah.
Trent Grisham's OPSs by year when he played for the Padres, like it was extraordinarily unlikely that he would have a 980 OPS for the whole season.
The Yankees weren't even going to play him. I mean,
Yeah.
he's good defensively. That was the whole thing, that they were going to at least get some good defense out of him in center because they were moving Judge to right. But yeah, that was shocking. And the power surge. What, he had like 13 home runs in his
Yeah.
first
He had more home runs in like 43 games that he had the previous year and 140.
Yeah.
The other thing to say about the Yankees, and then we'll move on, is they were also doing this at a time when Max Fried was pitching as well as he's going to pitch all year. He's 9-1 with like a 2 ERA.
Yeah.
And Carlos Rodon had a massive bounce back first couple months of the season. And so you also think like, okay, well, these guys are going to start hitting a little more, but those guys aren't going to pitch that well. They just aren't. Like Max Fried is not going 20-2 this year with a 1.75 ERA. So, like it looked for a second like the Yankees were a runaway freight train that we're going to run away from the rest of the AL East. That's not the case. It's going to be a little more of a dogfight than we thought. The Red Sox were 6-18 or 6-19 in one-run games. That's a fluke. That has
Yeah.
already reversed course. And, who knows what the rest of the season has in store, but it's nice to watch when you believe in things like regression to the mean. It's really nice to watch it actually unfold when the team that you hate the most in the world
Yeah.
has been like giving the mean the middle finger as they
Yeah.
as they
Yeah, no, I
snowplow.
think regression to the mean, generally speaking, is not that fun to root for. But when it's the Yankees,
Oh, it's
yeah,
wonderful.
you
Yeah.
definitely want that. I think also the American League just isn't any good. There are just not very many good teams in the American League,
Yeah.
and so the Yankees are as good as anybody in the league, so that's dangerous or whatever. But look, here's what I would say, and this is I'm sure Yankees fans. I don't know if it's keeping them up at night, but this should be if they want, this can keep them up at night. I mean, Aaron Judge has had some playoff issues, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like that's the thing, and this team just isn't very good without him. Like
Yeah.
he's got to be at a whole other level. And meanwhile, the Rays they don't make any sense. That team doesn't make any sense at all. But
Name 4 Rays.
can Junior Caminero be two? I mean, they don't make any sense. But all right, we've waited long enough. It's time for the emergency, and here's how I think we should start our emergency talk about Rafael Devers. You have to sort of give us the TikTok of your own reaction to that happening.
So my son broke the news to me by texting me WTF. And when he texts me that, that means that the Red Sox have done, or the Celtics have done something weird.
Really weird. Yeah.
So I go online, I see the rumor, which at the time had been tweeted, I think, by someone I didn't know. Like it
Okay.
wasn't, you
Yeah, it was
know,
like somebody. It was the story was broken by somebody at Fansided or something like that.
something like that. It wasn't, it wasn't Jeff Passan. And so I then broke the news to my Red Sox text thread by saying, "Did we just trade Devers?" And what was fascinating was the initial reaction was split right down the middle, I would say,
Okay.
between, "Oh my God, this is amazing. I can't believe we got out of that contract," to, "This is a disaster. He's the only guy in the team who can hit."
Right.
And so then the next thing was then it's confirmed. Then what happens is like one of the longest sustained debates I would say that my Red Sox fan friends have ever had. And there are hardliners who are like, this contract's going to age terribly.
Sure.
Losing Xander was a blessing.
Blessing.
Like
Right.
280 million on an extension that I think has only barely kicked in at this point for a guy with a 625 OPS. Also, it should be noted Wilmer Flores, who the Giants signed last year in the offseason or whatever it was, he has a 200 something million dollar contract that just only barely kicked in. He has a 650 OPS, whatever.
Right.
Like these contracts tend to not be worth it. They
Of
just
course.
do. Also, should be noted, the debate centered around a true fact about this, which is all of this goes back to Mookie. And I think a bunch of people wrote about this. I think was it Buster Olney? I think wrote a piece about it, maybe Passan too. But really, what this is about is an organization that committed an original sin in 2020 or
Yeah.
2019, and what you feel can't be separated entirely from that move. So
Of course not.
there is the on paper, cold hearted, steely analysis of this trade in this moment. And then that entire trade and decision has to be put into the context of who are these owners? What are they doing with this team? How are
Right.
they going about their business? So let's start with part one. Okay. Just the trade itself.
Yeah.
Split down the middle, like I said. Some people we're so lucky that they paid this whole deal. I can't believe my buddy Kevin Hench said, I can't believe we got anything back, frankly.
Yeah.
Like Kyle Harrison was the best pitching prospect in baseball behind Skeens the year he came out of college. and he's had mixed results in the pros so far, but like still, he's 23, and
Sure.
Jordan Hicks, they tried to turn him into a starter and that kind of failed, but like if we can turn him, we need relievers desperately, so maybe you throw him back into the pen and his negative WAR as a starter could become a positive WAR as a setup guy or whatever.
Sure.
So and also the cold hard fact is there aren't that many guys in baseball who year in, year out have an 850 OPS and hit 30 homers.
Right.
And he's one of those guys. And he's still only 28 years old. And after an 0 for 21 start to the season, he's right back where we all knew he would be, which is he
Sure.
has right now a 900 OPS and he's on pace to hit 30 homers. And so when you remove a guy like that from your lineup, who is now DHing and can't hurt you at third base, as he did many
Yeah.
times when he played third base, your team offensively is worse today than it was a couple days ago,
For
without
sure.
question. And since the trade, they've won a bunch of games. They were winning a bunch of games before the trade, but now they've won games after the trade too. They're winning those games 2-1 and 3-1
Right.
and 1-0. And it's
Right.
hard not to think that, as exciting as it is to have Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell and Marcelo Mayer all in the lineup, those guys don't know how to hit yet. And
Right.
and so, Roman Anthony, who has 2 hits in his first 25 at bats or whatever it is in the majors, is hitting third for this team right now. He's
Yeah.
hitting
That's
he's
right.
hitting third because their lineup isn't very good. So on paper, at this moment, your team is worse. That's just that there's no way to deny that. Like your team
Yes.
got worse. And side note, the main thing that Devers did in his 8 years in Boston is destroy the Yankees, just absolutely
Yes.
murder the Yankees. He famously and delightfully, and I encourage all of you to go watch this if you haven't already, hit an opposite field home run off of Aroldis Chapman in the 9th inning of a game at Yankee Stadium with 2 strikes and on a 103.4 mile an hour fastball, I believe,
Yes.
and to tie a game that the Red Sox later won. And he was a rookie, it should be noted, he was like 19 when he did that, right? And he has at Yankee Stadium and at Fenway destroyed the Yankees. And
Yeah.
it felt like it felt when we had Ortiz, and you just were like, you weren't scared of them anymore because you were like, oh, Ortiz is going to get 4 at bats in this game, and he's going to do something awesome because that's what he does.
Sure.
So your team is worse, and Craig Breslow, who maybe is a grade A weirdo, let's just say it out loud. I think he's a
Yeah.
grade A weirdo, that guy. That's all the
Yeah.
reporting that's come out behind the scenes and about the organization, which we'll save for a second in the bigger picture discussion. Seems like he's maybe a weirdo, but he said, I think we're going to win more games without Devers this year than we would with
Right.
Devers. Now, what he's basing that on, I would assume, is they can, if Roman Anthony starts hitting, Roman Anthony can DH while they play Duran and Abreu when he comes back from injury, and Rafael
Yeah.
at center, and they'll have, they'll make up the offense that they lost. They'll be better defensively because they don't have to worry about, they have a bunch of good defenders. They can play in the outfield, etc. I don't think the team is guaranteed to win more games without Rafael Devers than they were when he was hitting. He has an 850 OPS every year and hits 30 homers. Like, it's hard to replace that guy especially when he's DHing. Long term, so your team's worse. That's point number 1. Your team is
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. So let me
Jump
dive
in.
in a little bit on the trade itself, specifically the trade, because obviously I have very strong thoughts about the Red Sox and this very, very bad turn for the organization in my view. But specifically to the trade itself, we live in a time where obviously we all are watching the money, right? We're all watching, I mean, obviously the Red Sox regret doing that whole, reset tweet, when they reset the luxury tax thing. Um, but we all are watching that. There's no way around it. Obviously, we watch it in every sport. We watch the Cleveland Browns are completely helpless because of one terrible contract.
Yeah.
The NBA teams are completely. That's it. They can't move. They can't do anything.
You give a max deal to the wrong guy in the NBA, and your franchise is dead for like 3 years.
For 3 years. You're just dead. There's nothing you can do. So we're all watching the money, and it's a little less true in baseball because, of course, you can spend as much as you want if you're willing to spend, like the Mets do. But it's still there. If there's no money issue in this is a disastrous trade. Disastrous. And that's not to say that Kyle Harrison has no chance of being a great player. No chance, not saying that they're not going to get some value out of. They've got they got a prospect in there who's really been hitting the ball hard the last couple of months. That might all work out. You don't trade a top 20 player in baseball for nothing. You don't do that. The only reason they made this trade is to get out of that contract. That's it. And whatever they got, hey, you make the most of it. I'm sure they put together all the analytics they could to get as much as they could out of it. But they found an organization willing to spend the entirety. They did not have to pick up a single penny of that contract that they gave out. And so that's how you look at the trade. You have to look at the trade like that. From an on the field standpoint, what Craig Breslow said is stupid. They're way worse now. They're a way worse team. That doesn't mean they're not going to have a better record the rest of the year because, as you said, the first 2 months they didn't win a single one-run game. It felt like, right?
Yeah.
Like they were just, so that'll even out probably, and then he'll be able to say like, oh yeah, but you're seeing it. I mean, even the games they're winning lately, like you said, are 2-1, 3-2, 1-0. That's what that team is. So I think it's fine to say, hey, I'm talking about this from a long-term standpoint. That contract probably will not age well. It's clear that the organization had lost faith in him for whatever, obviously for that they were mad at him that he didn't just happily go to DH. They were mad at him because he didn't want to, go to first base after they disrespected him. Whatever the case may be, we can argue back and forth forever about whose fault it is. But this is an escape hatch trade. That's all this is.
Well,
And talking about it from a baseball standpoint, to me, misses the whole point. I
well,
mean, it's there.
they can't talk about the other part of it, and the other part of it does matter. The other part of it is, and this is not, and this is where like it's good to actually have a couple days to like have organize your thoughts, right? So the other part, it wasn't just dumping the contract. Mookie was dumping the contract because
Yes.
Mookie was a model citizen, a model teammate, a beloved figure. He came up big in the biggest moments. He played wherever they wanted him to. He won a World Series game and then went to a homeless shelter in Boston and handed out food at like midnight. That's this is why he's the greatest living American, and that's why that trade was the original sin. It's because they not only dumped a guy for money reasons, they dumped a guy who, by all rights, should have gone down in history on the Mount Rushmore of Red Sox players. It should have essentially been Ted Williams, Jim Rice,
Wade Boggs.
Well, not even more than Boggs. I was going to say the guys who spent their whole lives there.
Oh, the whole careers there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Ted Williams, Jim Rice, Ortiz, even though Ortiz started with the Twins, and Mookie. That should have been your four. Like, these are the guys who came up through our system, even though Ortiz didn't again, but they played here for 18, 19, 20 years, retired, had their number retired, made the Hall of Fame, wore Red Sox.
There if you want, instead of Ortiz.
Potentially, yeah. But so that's the original sin. In this case, what you have is homegrown player, very beloved, tons of people wearing number 11 jerseys at Fenway, blah, 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 blah. But it wasn't just getting out of the contract. It was a guy who they gave $313 million to.
Right.
Side note, because they had traded Mookie and it had backfired so terribly, and because they had lost Bogarts to the Padres, even though, side note to the side note, that ended up being very good for them.
It did, but I do want to pause on that because, again, yes, it worked out and they probably did, but they were never. If Bogarts was hitting 500 now, the Red Sox still weren't going to pay him. It was a money dump. It's a money dump that worked out, but I think like the reason they do stuff is really important.
Well, but okay,
And
but that's the last point. So put a pin in that, because the it needs to be said about Devers that he was paid. He was the guy who was paid. They paid
he
him
was
that
paid.
money, right?
Yeah,
So when you pay a guy that money, you are expecting certain things out of that guy, and those
sure.
things are that he'll be the leader of the team, that he will be the guy who is he's on the every when you walk into Fenway and there's a giant poster celebrating the upcoming season, he's standing in the
That's right.
front of
Yeah,
the team,
he's
right?
on the when
So,
they have media guides, he's your guy on the cover of the
right.
media.
So
Yeah,
when you say, hey man, we want to sign Alex Bregman, he plays third and he's a very good defensive third baseman.
yeah,
We need you to DH, and he throws a tantrum and says, I don't
yeah,
want to do that. And then the owner of the team flies out and has a sit down with you, and you still say, screw you, I don't want to do this. I mean, I guess that was when they wanted him to move to first.
right.
Yeah. So your first baseman goes down with a catastrophic injury, is going to miss the year. And they're like, hey, can you move to first? And he says no.
Yeah,
And then the owner of the team flies out and he throws a hissy fit, and he publicly to the press says, I'm not doing it. I don't care. I'm not doing it. I'm
yeah,
sick of these guys asking me to. And then when you step back and you think like, buddy, playing first is like a thing that everyone who's shaped like you does at some point, right? Like that's a move. Bryce Harper plays first base. Bryce
right.
Harper's in a lot better shape than you are, and was a better defender than you were, even if he was a
Yeah,
little iffy out there. This is just what you do. And also it shouldn't even matter what shape you are. It should, if you're being paid $313 million, and this is the tack of the hardliners in my text thread.
yes.
If you're being paid $313 million, your answer is yes, right? When the team says we need you to do
Okay.
blank, your answer is yes. And
Yes.
so he
However, I'm sorry. I've
no,
got to be the hardliner on the other side of this thing, though.
sure.
I've got to be the hardliner on the other side. If you're paid $313 million and you're told that you are the franchise player, then when they want to trade for Alex Bregman, they call you into the
Of
office
course.
and say to you, "Hey, we really want to trade for Alex Bregman. We think he's great. He's a terrific third baseman. We think you'd be better as a DH." You talk to him
Of
before
course.
you make the move.
Yes.
All
So
right. And he says to you in that meeting, you guys promised me that I would be the third baseman. That's when I signed the deal. That was part of the contingency. You promised me that. And then they say to him, look, that was a different organization. Things have changed. Alex Bregman, we desperately need him. You talk all of this out, not in the press,
of
out
course.
of way, well before you make the move. Okay. And they had months to have that conversation. We know for a fact, because it was reported, that Alex Bregman said he'd play second base. Alex Bregman said, hey, I really want to be with the Red Sox. I'll play second. Keep him at third base. They could have done that, but they didn't want to do that because they have Christian Campbell. And they're like, oh, well, we've got this young kid. We wanted second base. So that's more important to us than our franchise player that we made all these promises to. All I'm saying is, looking at him from his perspective, they totally disrespected him in a
Oh,
huge way.
100%.
Huge way.
That is the
And
other.
then they come back to him and they say, okay, now I know we told you we're not doing that anymore. You don't even have to keep your glove. Just throw your glove away. Now they're like, oh, bring the glove back out because we need you at first base. And again, why would he take that at face value from an organization he feels badly disrespecting him? I'm not saying he did the right thing. He didn't. I agree. But I don't think we pay him $313 million, he should do whatever we tell him, is the right answer, because they didn't treat him like a $313 million
I
player.
absolutely agree. This is where there are no good guys in this, right?
Right.
Because if you're Devers, what you want out of your franchise player is the attitude that a guy like, just off the top of my head, Mookie Betts has, where he's like, where do you need
Right.
me? Where do I go?
Right.
I'll play anywhere. I don't care.
Right.
I'll learn shortstop, the most difficult position to play outside of catcher. I'll do that if that helps the team win. I'll play right. I'll play second. I'll pitch if you need me to pitch. I'll sweep up the empty sunflower seed shells from the clubhouse. That's again, going back to that for a second. That's why that is the original sin of this
It's the original.
franchise.
Yeah.
And obviously it's a franchise with a lot of original sins. So I'm only speaking in the last, call it 15 years.
Right.
But so Devers stinks for
Yeah.
for being whiny and for being a little bit of a baby. He stinks.
Yes, for sure.
And the organization blew it a million ways from Sunday. They didn't
Yes.
properly platform the Bregman thing. They didn't properly platform what they needed out of him or expected out of him. They didn't properly platform the move to first that they wanted after Casas went down. They didn't do any of that stuff. And it should be said that Breslow, who again is a grade A weirdo,
Yes.
one of the things that was reported this week is that they brought in a consulting group, which has the dumbest name in the history of consulting
This is
groups,
unbelievable.
called Sportsology. That's the name of the consulting group that got brought in. And when Breslow took over, and it was like, it is this classic thing, this virus, this absolute plague that is destroying the country in which we live, which is
Yes.
these consulting groups come in and the buzzwords are all the same. It's efficiency, streamlining, right sizing, all of that crap. And what happens is they go, hey, you should fire these 38 people and do X, Y, and Z, and you will increase profit margin 12.648% or whatever,
Yes.
right? And in those 38 people are like a beloved 78-year-old woman who, like, bakes cookies for everybody and brings them in on Fridays and has the title of, like, senior administrator in the office or whatever. And they're like, what are we paying her? $94,000 a year? Get out of here, lady. And then there's like a 85-year-old guy who's like the head of the scouting department, essentially emeritus, and he's making $168,000 a year because he's been with the team since 1941. And they're like, $184,000 a year, get out of here, man. And what people don't know is that, like, he's like this wonderful guy who has all these wonderful stories about Ted
Yep.
Williams and Carl Yastrzemski and Jackie Jensen and whoever, and that also, like, every day, Garrett Crochet goes and rubs his bald head for good luck before his starts. And you're like, nope, you're gone. Get out of here, buddy. And so they're like, haha, look at this streamlined, efficient, professional outfit we're running now. We've saved $3.1 million per year in administrative costs. And meanwhile, everyone in the building is miserable, just miserable. Everyone's daily work experience has gone down in happiness quotient like 68.45%, and they never think about it. They never care about it. They treat people like they're fungible tokens that they can just throw away or cash in. And so that's how they treated Devers in this moment. They treated him like a little cube that they could just move around this little the little board, their playing surface. And because of that, he was upset, and I don't blame him. I want him to have the attitude of course, I'll play wherever you need. But, like, this organization pretty clearly, since the Mookie trade, and it's different regimes, same owner, different regimes, has pretty clearly treated this as one asset in an asset portfolio that needs to be run at maximum efficiency. And what maximum efficiency appears to mean is you don't care about any of the employees, really. You don't care about they don't treat them like they're human beings with thoughts and feelings and emotions. You treat them like fungible assets that you can manipulate and move around, and you put all of the burden of doing your job well under extremely awful circumstances and under duress. You put it all on the shoulders of the players, and that is not a recipe for success. And that has been my fear about this franchise. I'll say a couple other things about this, by the way, as long as I'm ranting. The Fenway Sports Group also owns Liverpool, my favorite European football team. Liverpool just signed a 22-year-old German midfielder named Florian Wirtz, who is like one of the biggest rising up and coming stars in all of soccer. They signed him to a new deal. The transfer fee was something like $150 million. That means they had to pay $150 million just to get him on the team before they start paying him an exorbitant salary. It is hard when you have a guy like John Henry who has this large portfolio of sports teams. It includes the Pittsburgh Penguins and Liverpool and this and that and whatever.
Right.
It's hard not to say that he's somewhere with a spreadsheet going, well, Devers does help us pay for Florian Wirtz.
Sure, of course
And
it does.
if you're a fan of both the Red Sox and Liverpool, as I happen to be, that's mitigated a little bit because you're like, all right, well, another team that I like, it got better or whatever. And I don't know, obviously, no one will ever know whether that was a factor. But if you're just a fan of the Red Sox, what you're thinking is, I don't give a crap about Florian Wirtz
Of course
and
not.
Liverpool. I care about the Boston Red Sox, and I want to think that the people running the Red Sox care about the Red Sox to the degree that they will pay an enormous amount of money for Red Sox players, not
Yes,
for Liverpool players. And so,
that's right.
so when you put all of this stuff, when you lay it all out, it is hard not to see this, from my point of view, as another data point in what is a developing analysis of this ownership group, which is that's not the most important thing. Isn't winning. It doesn't seem to be the most important thing. It seems to
No.
be that the most important thing is like efficiency and
Yep.
this sort of tech bro cold analysis of an asset and how to maximize the value of the asset. And if maximizing the value of the asset means spending less money on players and still being good enough to keep the fans happy enough that they continue to watch the games and support the advertisers who advertise in your local TV station
Right.
and attend events and buy jerseys and everything else, then they're happy,
Yeah.
right? They're happy. They've maximized efficiency. And like, again, this, and you've made this point many times, and I'll stop ranting and you can talk now, but you've made this point many times, but the Red Sox should be acting at all times like an alpha within the
Yes.
world of baseball. This
Right.
ownership group bought the team and the stadium and all of the surrounding areas for $750 million in 2002. It is now, and this ties into something we'll talk about later with the Celtics sale and the Lakers sale. It's now worth what, 10x that, right? If they sold it today,
Absolutely. Yeah.
if they
Total
sold it
10.
today, the opening bid would be 7 billion, let's just say,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So I call that maximizing your efficiency and your output or whatever you want to call it. I call that a win. And
Yeah.
because the Red Sox are one of the alpha teams in a media market that supports the team under almost any circumstances,
Right.
money should not be an issue. It just shouldn't be an issue. That doesn't mean you're stupid and you throw hundreds of millions of dollars at mediocre players. But what it does
Right.
mean is that, yes, maybe the Devers contract ends up not looking so great in years 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. You don't care about that. That's
That's
the
right.
whole point of being you. You don't care. You eat that money because in the next 4 years, when you're paying him 30 million and he is worth that money,
Yeah.
you win more because he's on your team and he has an 859 OPS and he kills the Yankees.
Yeah.
And you are willing, the whole competitive advantage you have is that you are able to eat $30 million a year in the final years of a contract when the player isn't worth it anymore. That's the
Of
whole
course.
goddamn point. And so,
Of course.
and the Red Sox, because of this obsession with efficiency and this Wall Street tech bro spreadsheet, a way of running a team, they are running the team currently like they're the Guardians or the Brewers.
Yeah.
They're running the team like, we have to get under the luxury tax. We have to get under this. We can't blah, blah, blah. The whole point is you can, and that's what
Yes.
gives you an advantage. That's how the Mets operate. That's how the Dodgers operate. That's how the Yankees operate. They overpay for the best players, knowing
Yep.
it's not going to look good down the line because other teams can't overpay for the good players in the
Right.
same way. And by not doing that, they are ceding one of the main advantages that they have over 25 of the other 29 teams.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot to say about a lot of that. I think we'll start with this. The way that they treated uh, Rafael Devers throughout this entire process um, speaks exactly to the tech bro thing, right? The efficiency. He clearly was never. They never viewed him with any level of respect at all, and were more than happy to throw him under the bus during every step of the way. They could have said to him, even after they totally screwed it up, they didn't care. They're like, he'll do what we tell him to do, right? They didn't care. But even after they sign him, and even after they go to Devers, they could have said to Devers very clear, like, look, we still want your glove. We still want it out there. We want you to take some balls at first. You'll play some games at third. We want we want you to be like a total player. We think you can help the team a lot more playing multiple positions. Alex is a fantastic third baseman, but every now and again we'll put him at second and we'll put you at third, and we'll just like there was such a different way to do that other than saying to him, like, you are now a DH, put away your glove. All right.
Yeah.
That's just, of course he was upset. Of course that bothered him. This is a proud athlete.
And
2 years ago, they told him.
A proud athlete who's 28 years old, and being a DH, when you move to DH, you don't come back, right?
No,
so
that's it.
Yeah. So like when they said
for the rest of your career, you will never play in the field again. That's what
right.
they told him. And then they come back to him just a few weeks later. And of course, look, does he know that he should try to do what he can for the team? Of course. He went to the Giants and immediately said, like, oh, yeah, I'll play first base. Like, immediately.
Such a good troll. I kind of had to give it up to him. It was a great troll. Because essentially what he was saying is, oh, I'll do whatever it takes to help the team win, just not that other team. That's
when a team treats me like that, I no longer feel part of that team. Like, that's really what he felt. And it really was funny because Casas was one of the players who really stood up for him after he blew up about third base. He's like, yeah, you know what? That guy's our third baseman. I think he should be our third baseman. Alex Bregman's, the Johnny come latey's a new guy. Plus, Alex Bregman has an opt-out at the end of this year.
Oh, he sure does.
And he's having a good enough year. He's taking that opt-out.
100%.
And the Red Sox are not going to give him a long-term contract. Like,
I'll tell you what they're going to do. I'll tell you what they're going to do. They're going to offer him 3 years and $110 million, and he's going to tell him to go screw, and he's going to sign a 7-year deal to play third base for the Dodgers, who, by the way, need a third baseman because Max Muncy can't really play in the field anymore. So, yes, that's the other. There's a million other things here, but another thing here is that people were like, oh, well, now that they have that money back from Devers, they can give it to Bregman. They're not going to give it to Bregman. They're just not going to give it to him. They're going to offer him an amount of money that he won't accept, and he'll go somewhere else. And by the way, in order to keep him, you know what you have to do? Overpay him. You have to overpay him
for too many years.
For too many years, and an amount of money that will look really bad when Alex Bregman's 37. And because of the way that they run the team, they're not going to do that. And if they do, they'll immediately start shopping him because they'll be like, well, this contract isn't going to look good in 5 years.
Well, that's the thing. And that's why I am of the belief that I'm not saying this was the plan was executed to perfection, because I don't believe that at all. I think it's mostly incompetence. But I think from the very start, Greg Breslow and this organization wanted him out. I just believe that. They didn't want to pay him that money. So I'm not saying that they're like evil geniuses. They're like, all right, listen, what we're going to do is we know it's going to really get him when we tell him he's now a DH. The guy literally, and I don't even know that this has ever happened before. He literally never played another position in professional baseball other than third base.
Yeah.
Literally every single game he played was as a third baseman. So they go to him and they're like, you're not a third baseman anymore. And like, they knew, I mean, you could argue they knew. You could argue they knew exactly what was going to happen when they went to him later and said, all right, okay, now we need you to play first base. And suddenly it's like, oh, this is untenable. This is untenable. And then you're going to release like garbage statements to the media about anonymous sources saying like, oh, we expect more from our franchise player. I'm just so on Devers' side on this.
I'm split down the middle, and it's actually more accurate to say that I'm on neither side, because
that's right. I think that's true.
But
I wouldn't defend Devers for the way he's acted.
I want to bring up two more things about this tech bro efficiency business model thing.
Please.
So 2 stories came to mind. One of them recent, one of them distant past. The recent one is, I believe it's McKinsey, which if you don't know anything about the McKinsey Consulting Group, it is an organization run by the worst people in the world who hire
That's
the
right.
worst people in the world to do the worst things in the world. Like they
That's right.
literally like
That's their slogan.
that's right. We're the worst people in the world, and we help the worst people in the world make more money. And McKinsey, like they over the years have been, you can look it up. They've been involved in some incredible scandals. Like
Yes.
it's literally like if you are the dictator of a small nation and you're looking for ways to better rape and pillage the country that you run out of all of its resources for your own gain,
They're on
hire
speed
hire
dial.
McKinsey. They will give you some excellent methods for destroying the country that you run. Like they've literally consulted with, I don't know that this is true, but I think they consulted with al-Bashir in Syria. They consulted with, like, I'm sure I'm sure Saddam Hussein was a client at some point. Like
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
they're just, it's a miserable amoral organization of nonsense people doing nonsense things. And recently, I believe this is true. I apologize. Don't sue me if I get some of the details of this wrong.
Okay.
But do you remember when HBO decided to become HBO Max and just
Yes.
somehow give up the brand that more represented quality than any other brand probably in the history of television? They were like, we're going to change that.
Right.
You know who advised them to do that? McKinsey.
Gee,
And
McKinsey,
and I
really.
believe someone tweeted this out the other day, and again, I'll get all the details wrong. I believe it's McKinsey. McKinsey was paid tens of millions of dollars to advise Warner Brothers to merge with Discovery, then paid tens of millions of more dollars advising them to change HBO to HBO Max, then was paid tens of millions of more dollars to tell them to go back to being HBO, which they're now
Yes.
doing, and then was
Yes.
paid tens of millions of dollars to advise them to split off Discovery from Warner Brothers. So like, they made like $120 million advising this one group of people to make two terrible mistakes and then undo them.
And then
And
undo them.
that
Yeah.
at some weird level, that's like what is going on here to me. Is it's
I
like
agree.
they're making these decisions that cost a lot of money, and then they sit back and they act like, oh geez, who made these terrible decisions? We have to undo these terrible decisions, and then they undo them. And it's like, it's all the same people. I know it's not the same GM, it's not the same regime, but it is John Henry. Like, it is still John Henry. And I feel like,
Sure.
I bet you anything, I'd bet dollars to donuts that at some point John Henry had a glass of aged grappa with someone from McKinsey before the Devers signing, in the middle of the Devers signing, and after the Devers trade. The other story that comes to mind is back when I was first started at SNL, NBC was owned by GE. I feel like I've told this story before, maybe on the
I
podcast,
don't
but I'll
think so.
tell it again because it's relevant. And NBC Sports was like the brand. NBC Sports, they had the NBA on
Yep.
NBC. They
Yep.
had football. They had like one, instead of Fox and CBS on Sundays, one of those games was the AFC game was
Was
on
NBC.
NBC.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they take over, and the packages get more expensive every year. Obviously, it's hundreds of millions of dollars back then. And at some point, GE is running this. Owns NBC in the same way that GE owns, their insurance division and their locomotives
Right.
division and their mining division. And NBC is treated like one of those divisions, which is to
Sure.
say, you have to increase profits between 8 and 12% every year, which means 2 to 4% every quarter. And if you don't, heads will roll. And we're going to fire the 10. They have the Six Sigmas, their famous management theory, which was one of the tenets of Six Sigma was, no matter how good your division does, you take the 10% of the least well-performing people in each division and you fire them every year. The bottom, even if those people have done great, it doesn't matter.
Right.
If they're in
Right.
the bottom 10%, they're fired, right? So it's just this ruthless efficiency kind of thing. So over the course of the time I'm at SNL, the basketball package comes up for renewal, and they let it go, and they
Yep.
let it go to ESPN and ABC. And what they say, or maybe it was TNT, I can't remember. And what they say is the numbers didn't make sense. Like, it was too much money. And by letting this go, we are going to save $500 million a year or whatever it was,
Right.
because we'll no longer be spending that money. So it's actually good. Our black ink, more black ink for us, less red ink for us, because we're not going to spend hundreds of $1 millions on the NBA. And then, like a year later, the football package comes up and it
Yep.
gets really expensive and they let it go. They let it go to Fox. And they're like, makes a lot of sense for us. Like we're
Yeah.
not we were going to spend, 800 million a year on football. We're not spending that anymore. So guess what? We just saved $800 million a year.
Yep.
And
Yep.
they just kept letting it go. They just kept letting all of their sports go. And then they sat back with satisfied grins on their faces and were like, look at all the money we've saved. And then
Yep.
suddenly it was like, but we have no sports. we're NBC Sports has no sports. And they totally panicked. And then they were like, oh, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start our own league. It's going to be called the XFL. And
Yep.
we're going to do it with Vince McMahon. Great guy, lovely guy, Vince McMahon.
Good
Wonderful guy.
person. Just good person.
Great person. No problems. Everything good. We're
Yep.
going to start our own football league. And to great fanfare, they rolled out the XFL and it landed like a wet fart on the American public. And instantly no one cared. And it was stupid and bad. And the competition was bad and everything was bad. And they did it for like a year and a half or 2 years. And suddenly we're like, oh my God, we have blown it. And they had to then buy back into the NFL at a much more exorbitant cost than they had to. And the NFL is just sitting there with a Cheshire cat grin on its face,
Yeah.
waiting for them to
Yeah.
crawl back. And they had to buy back in. They get one game a week, Sunday night, and they spend billions and billions and billions of dollars on that one game a week. And they get one playoff. They get like the 10 a.m. West Coast time AFC wildcard game or whatever. And they get the Super Bowl every 4 years because they're part of the media package. But it was the classic. This is the galaxy brained business tech bro efficiency thinking, which was when things are expensive, if you don't pay for them, you are smart because you have saved all that money. And then you look up and you're like, right, but we don't have any hitters. That's the problem. When you don't pay for any hitters, it like you might have been overpaying for that hitter. He was a really good hitter. And so you let him go and you're like, haha, look at our genius. Look how smart we are. We didn't lose all that money. You don't have any hitters. Like I looked this up the other day. Jazz Chisholm, who's like the 9th best player on the Yankees and has played in 44 games this year, would be second on the Red Sox in home runs.
Yeah.
He hits 10 homers. They don't have anybody who can hit home runs. Every single ball they hit, this team, is a weak grounder to second. And so Rafael Devers hit laser beams all over the field. And you can be really proud of yourself for not spending $31 million on Rafael Devers in the year 2029. Congratulations. You did a great job getting out of that contract. Who's hitting the ball for you tomorrow against the Angels? Who's hitting the ball for you in a game at September against the Yankees when you're 3 games out of first place? And so I just get so frustrated and annoyed at this business thinking, which is like, we're so smart because we got out of this contract and we're so efficient and we're so clever and we're so good at business. And it's like, yeah, your team stinks. And so and again, just to put a fine point on this, the whole point of being a team like the Red Sox is you don't have to be that efficient.
Well, I would take it even a step further than that, because one of the things that absolutely drives me crazy in baseball, and this has been building for several years now, but it's really true this year. I do not believe you can build a championship team from within. Not entirely.
Yeah.
You've got to go. Now they did. They did go and get Garrett Crochet, but they seem to be following that Washington Nationals path, right? Where the Nationals are like, oh, we don't need Juan Soto. We can get all of this incredible talent for Juan Soto. Look at all of the amazing players. And Trey Turner, look at all the amazing players we got for them. You know what? They're never going to be any good. Never. Because those guys can be good individually, but as a team, they're just never ever going to be any good. And it's sort of like, hey, we got James Wood. It's like, great. You know what? Most of those guys are not going to turn out. And one or two of those guys is not good enough. I so vividly remember in 2013 or 2014, the Royals made what at the time was considered like a fiasco of a trade, right? They traded Will Myers, who at the time was a top 5 prospect in baseball, and they traded him to, and all they got back was big game James, and Wade Davis, who at the time was a failed starter. And I remember talking to Dayton Moore at the time and saying, like, you're getting crucified for this deal. Nobody trades top 5 prospects, and certainly, you got a good pitcher in James Shields, and maybe Wade Davis will turn out okay. But you just traded a top 5 prospect. And he said, and I just so vividly remember this, he said, at some point you have to stop building and start winning. That's what
Yeah.
you have to do. And Baltimore never went from building to winning, and you can see what a disaster that's been. Washington is never even trying to go from building to winning. And now the Red Sox seem very much to me, look, I love those prospects as much as anybody, but they're not all going to turn out. I mean, they're just not. That's not how that works. And the Boston Red Sox, of all teams, should be the last team that's building and not winning. You've got to, if you're not turning that switch, I mean, you should be ashamed of yourself. So if you're the Boston Red Sox and you're like, oh, no, we're going to be good in 3 years when Roman Anthony and Christian Campbell and all these guys. No, you're not. You're just not. If you don't have stars, if you don't build, again, they got Crochet, which is clearly the best thing that they've done,
Right.
and something that other organizations should have gone after and tried to do, but they got him, and so they'll probably be okay in some ways, but you're not seriously competing when you're just sitting there still playing this thing off to the future. Rafael Devers is their best hitter. Rafael Devers is one of the best hitters in baseball, and they dumped him. They
Yeah.
dumped him because they didn't want to pay him. And by the way, the other thing about it is, that's not a bad contract. I mean, it will age poorly, but if it was a bad contract, the Giants wouldn't have picked it up. You wouldn't have been able to find a team that that would pay that full contract.
That's the final piece of this puzzle, I think, is the Giants can't get anyone to sign with them in free agency because their park is too big. And they had Correa, and then there was that weird thing with the physical, and then he disappeared and went to the Twins, and they're probably ultimately, they might be happy they didn't actually sign that deal with him. I don't know. But then they went after Judge hard because he's from that area, and the Yankees were not going to let Aaron Judge leave. And so they've just gone after these big fish and couldn't get him. The only way to get a guy like this is to trade him. So it's trade for him. So, they are willing to, they know that the contract won't age well. They don't care because they have a lot of money and they have a good team, of like a decent team who, as we pointed out in our last podcast, our last perfectly timed podcast, didn't have a true sort of number 3, all-star hitter, and now they do. And it's like, that's a smart move. The smart move is to say, like, yeah, it's going to suck when we're paying this guy and he misses 82 games because of a quad injury when he's 33, and he is only a DH and whatever, but like, we might be able to win the World Series in the next couple of years if we have this guy. And who I weirdly thought of, and I don't know if this is even that relevant, but I weirdly thought of JD Martinez. So in 2018, the Red Sox give JD Martinez, I don't know, 100 and something million for 5 years, right?
Right.
He's absolutely a DH. He's just a DH, right?
Yep.
And he'd been good for Detroit and Arizona. He'd obviously had like 1,000 OPS a couple of years, and he had and whatever. But he's just a DH, and they're like, we might regret paying this guy $20 million a year, $25 million a year when he's 34, 35 years old. We don't care. And they won the World Series. That's what happened. They won the World Series in 2018. And that guy, if look at his WAR. So he had almost a 7 WAR as a DH essentially in 2018.
It's an incredible year.
Then it went down 3.5. He had a negative WAR in the COVID shortened season. Who cares? He had a 3 WAR in when he was 21 when they we're 2 games away from going back to the World Series. And he
Right?
went down to 1.1 in 2022. So you're paying $20 million for a DH in 2022 who basically has 1 win better than a replacement player who had 16 homers the whole year. Oh, well, you know what else happened? Because you got him, you won the World Series 4 years earlier.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I've been thinking about JD Martinez a lot because obviously Devers, it's more money, although, adjusted for the salary increase, it's not that much more money than they paid JD Martinez. And it's like you make these 10-year deals for the first 5 years, and you're going to eat the money in the last 5 years, and you don't care because you're the Red Sox and you have a license to print money, and
Yep.
you're richer than sin, and
Yep.
your asset is worth $6.4 billion more than it was when you bought it, and you can sell it at any moment and be totally happy with your return on investment. And I'm so sick of the mindset that traded Mookie, the mindset that didn't extend Bogarts. The result of that is irrelevant. The mindset is the same, which is we're not going to overspend for these guys. And when they're your hometown guys, when they're guys that you want to keep in a Red Sox uniform for the rest of their careers, to treat them like they're the same as any other fungible asset on your spreadsheet is a bad way to do business. And at some point, it is going to come back and bite you in the ass.
Well, sure it is. And I would say this. You want to talk about DHs, perfect example of this. I think the Red Sox are very lucky and happy that this is not where John Henry was in 2009 when David Ortiz had that bad year, right?
Yeah.
When it looked like he was done at 32. It looked like he was done.
Yeah.
And he had a bunch of money left on his contract. I mean, that is absolutely. Craig Breslow walks in there. By the way, have you seen this latest thing? And I don't know that it's been confirmed, but I guess one reporter reported that he had AI interview
I
like somebody.
I believe
Like,
this
is
is
this true?
I believe this is overblown. It's a
Okay.
juicy story because it's about AI, but
Yeah.
they have some kind of system that does an initial screening of any applicant for any job in the
Okay.
organization. And
Okay.
apparently a lot of teams do this. It's like
No.
they
But
they get 1,000 applicants for a assistant research guy, whatever. And the first thing that happens is there's some kind of very basic AI system that just
right.
like
Which
takes in
which
all
I
of
would
their
have.
basic information. It's not what you think it is, which is that like no human being is speaking to another human
Well,
being and
but
they're making decisions.
the story that came out, whether or not again it's true or it's just an overblown version of what you're saying, is that they had somebody interviewed 5 times only by AI and had never talked to anybody there and was hired.
Interesting.
Which,
Well,
yeah, now again, don't know if it's true,
here's the
but
thing
here's what
though.
I would say:
Well,
that
I would,
organization,
regardless of whether it's true, the fact that
yeah,
that story comes out and people assume the worst is
yes.
that's the point, right? Is like the way
Well,
this organization is being run, you're like, yeah, I buy that. I'll bet that
Well, and not only
that's true.
that, not only that, there are people inside that organization who are miserable and are leaking pretty nasty
Oh,
things. Whether they're
100%.
overblowing them or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, that organization is a mess. I mean, they're the Boston Red Sox. That was the organization in baseball. That
Yeah.
was the envy of every other organization in baseball. You had the committed owner. You had there was a team that wanted to win every single year. There was never, and that was funny because was it Breslow? Somebody, oh, it was the GM said like, we're the Boston Red Sox. We try for the World Series every year, and it's
Yeah.
like, no, you used to do that. That used to be what this organization was. That is not what this organization is now. You do not go for the World Series every year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are so many badly run organizations in baseball now. The Orioles we've talked about a lot.
Oh yeah,
The
yeah.
the Red Sox are pretty clearly a
The
mess.
Nationals, I think, are bad.
Nationals are a mess. There's a bunch of
Marlins are a
and
mess. I
and
mean,
like the ones that are good we complain about the Cardinals all the time. That's a really well-run organization.
well-run organization.
The Dodgers obviously are like, you know what we're going to do? Use East Asia as our farm system. They just figure that out before anybody else. Like that, it's the distance between a well-run organization and a poorly run organization has never been greater, I think, in the history of
I think
sport.
that's right. Plus, the Dodgers have sort of figured out how to combine a little bit of that efficiency bro thing with like this effort to win. Like when they gave Shohei Otani $70 million a year, everybody was like, "Oh my God, they're breaking the game. They're just spending as much money as they want." They make a profit on that
Oh,
every year.
I mean,
Every
yeah.
year.
Yes, they were people complained and yelled and screamed and laughed at them. They were just in their room going like, "I can't believe we got him for only 70." This is a good segue to our final emergency, which is the sale of the
Yes.
LA Lakers, because the owner of the Dodgers is now also the owner of the Lakers.
$10 million.
It was,
$10 billion.
I think
Excuse
it
me.
was 1 million. It was 1
What? It
million.
was
Yeah.
$100,000 that they spent. $10 billion. Is that the final price? Is that what they're saying?
Well, he bought 4.8 billion of it at a
Right. He already
valuation
owned.
to
He
own.
owned like
He
20
bought
some percent.
48% at 4.8 billion. There are
Yeah.
a lot of aspects to this that are worth talking about, most of which we won't even cover here. But the most interesting things to me are, number one, the last mom and pop shop in professional sports almost is now no longer a mom and pop shop. I mean,
That's
I
right.
guess the Steelers are still a mom and pop shop
Steelers are and always will be.
and always will be. Like they're and by that what we mean is that this is their business. They don't. It's not a venture capital fund or a hedge fund or a billionaire who
No,
does something else who also owns a team. The only thing the Bus family did was run the Lakers. That was it,
right.
right? So now
That's right.
that's over. I love more than anything. This is the funniest thing about these sales. It happened with the Mavericks. It happened with the Celtics. Now it's happening with the Lakers, where the current owner, in this case, Jeannie Buss, it's like she's going to stay on and she's going to be the governor of the team.
I love that.
No,
I
she's
love
not.
that.
No, she's not. No, she's not. Like, remember
No, she's going to stay on.
Mark
No, don't
Cuban,
you understand?
Mark Cuban was like, "Don't worry, everyone. I am still making all basketball decisions for the Mavericks for the time being." And then, like 1 day later, they were like, "Guess what? We're trading Luka Doncic." And like, gone. Wick Grossbeck for the Celtics is like, "I'm going to stay on and be the governor." No, you're not. People don't buy things for $6 billion or $10 billion or whatever and let someone else run the team. That's just not the way it
No,
works. Like,
no, of
so
course not.
it's a little bit sad. Look, I hate the Lakers more than any organization outside of the Yankees and Cowboys. So
Yes, agreed.
I'm not really actually sad, but I'm a little bit sad because this is the last vestige of the way the system used to work. This
Yeah.
is the last family-owned business.
There is one more. Mike Brown and the Bengals.
So
So
I
that
meant
is
in the NBA, but yes,
in the NBA, it's the last one.
there's a couple of them, but I liked the fact that it was just this one weird, dysfunctional, miserable family with a bunch of total screw ups in it who were running one of the two premier franchises in the NBA. That was fun. That was a
Yes.
fun little detail about professional sports, and now that's over.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is to me though is, look, they bought the Dodgers. They have transformed the Dodgers into an absolute juggernaut. They unlocked the power of the LA media market and of that
Yes.
team in a way that is actually not dissimilar to what John Henry did with the Red Sox in 2002.
Agreed.
He was like, this is a distressed asset in a city that is dying to support a perennial winner. And they went to the Dodgers, who were a fine organization, a good team, a lot of history, whatever. And they basically were like, there's so much untapped potential here. It boggles the mind. And they have, in a sport where there is a luxury tax, their competitive advantages, we don't care. And we're gonna do all of this stuff. We're gonna bring in every MVP that comes up for auction. We're gonna buy that MVP.
Yep.
They have currently, I believe, 12 pitchers on the IL.
Yes.
12. And that's because every time Tyler Glasnow or Blake Snell or any of these guys comes up for free agency, they're like, yeah, come on over. And it's like, well, are you sure? They get injured a lot. And they're like, yeah, we don't care. We don't care.
Yeah.
Just come on over. And they just bring every reliever, Tanner Scott, get over here. Everyone, just come on in. Everyone, we'll stash you in a warehouse. And if you're hurt, fine. We don't care. We know you're going to get hurt. We don't care. And once you're healed, you come back and we'll win the World Series.
Yeah.
And then Shohei is like, oh, he's a free agent. And everyone's like, gosh, I wonder if Shohei's going to make $500 million in this contract. They're like, how about 700 million? Does that help? What about 700 million? Here's 700 million. Like they just go so immediately, so far and beyond
Yes.
what the rest of the baseball is doing because there's no real hard cap. Now,
No.
there is in basketball. There kind
There
of
is.
is. It's like the way that the new CBA works, they cannot just buy all the best players in the
No.
league because they can't. That's not the way it works. They could try to trade for them or get them. They can finagle various things, and then once they're on the team, they can pay them forever and just pay the
Right.
tax. But they cannot run the Lakers the way they run the Dodgers. And so the
No.
question is are they good enough and smart enough and forward thinking enough in a parallel way to the way they were with the Dodgers, where they can actually figure out how to like release the untapped potential of that team and that market?
Well, I mean, it's the Dodgers didn't figure it out right away, right? Like it takes a little time. You have to hire a bunch of super smart people and let those super smart people kind of run things, and then when you need to be bold, you go bold, right? I mean, they kind of got a pretty good head start when he bought a team that already has Luka Doncic on it. I
Not
mean,
bad.
that's not a bad place, right? And LeBron is going to be is when is LeBron going to announce his retirement? By the way, is
I
that
mean, who knows? I everyone I think feels like next year's the last year. Like
yeah,
he's
probably
played
so.
with Bronny now. He probably wants a full year with Luca. But also, like, whatever. They somehow get, they convince the Mavericks to give them Daniel Gafford too, and suddenly they have a center who Luca can throw lobs to, and the team
Yeah.
wins 64 games and makes the NBA Finals. I don't know. Maybe LeBron's like, yeah, let's run it back. Like it.
Well, that's the thing. So you've got him, but you've also got him at the end where at some point that's going to clear, right? And so you've got that. I mean, I would imagine that he looked at the Lakers as an opportunity in the same way that he looked at the
Must
Dodgers,
have.
right? I mean, well, it just makes sense, right?
I mean,
And
to be fair, he already owned whatever it was, 19%
yeah,
or
so he
whatever the
knows what's
team.
going on inside of it,
Yeah.
right? So he understands that, and probably thinks like, man, I'm just going to own all of LA,
Yeah.
right? But I don't know. I mean, if I were if you had an unlimited amount of money and said you could buy any team you want, right? But not necessarily a team that's like you can't buy Oklahoma City like and have it be a ready championship, but buy any team you want and have fun with your for the next 10 years building that team into something like beyond anything else in the sport. You could do worse than the Lakers. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, you start with Doncic. You start with an incredible market. You have as much money as you need to do what you have to do, and it won't be easy because of the salary cap. But yeah, they'll figure it out. They'll
It's
win a championship in the next 5 years.
There is
They'll win a
some
championship.
there is some very interesting aspects to this. Among them, they don't own their stadium.
Right?
And one of the minority owners does own the stadium, right? It's LA.
Yeah.
The guy who owns LA Live is a minority owner. And so
Oh
you
wow.
can't just like say, all right, goodbye, crypto.com arena. We're
Right.
building a new stadium. Also, it should be noted, it ain't easy to build in LA, right?
No.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But, the Clippers have their brand new stadium, which is gorgeous and
Yes.
really good. And crypto, only whatever 30 years old. It's not a good stadium. It's
No.
really
No.
lame. It's very antiseptic.
Yes.
There's no real like guts to it. It doesn't feel specific to the team or the city or
Nope.
the franchise or anything. That's a problem for them. The other problem for them, I would say, is that because like the Lakers used to own the city, they don't own the city anymore. Even with
No.
Luka, LeBron is on his way out. Even with Luka,
Yes.
they don't capture the city's attention. That especially the Dodgers are a huge deal here now, bigger
Of
than they have
course.
ever probably ever been. The
Yes.
the Clippers are fun and exciting, and that arena is really cool. The Rams and Chargers both have that new stadium downtown or down by the airport. They're not. It is not a void that they're going to fill easily. Like they're
No,
going to have to do. They're going to have to be kind of creative.
they'll have to do the work. They'll have to do the work, but I suspect he'll figure it out.
I'll say one final thing that brings this whole conversation full circle,
Sure.
which is not a thing that we're accustomed to doing here on the podcast.
We don't do that.
We don't.
No. In fact, by the way, I am willing to guarantee that before this comes out, Devers gets traded back to the Red Sox.
In the final years of Kobe Bryant in LA, he was bad. He was a bad basketball player. He was not good anymore. And the team was horrific. They had run the team into the ground. They were winning like 25 games a year. Kobe's going to retire soon. And he comes up for free agency. And you know what the Lakers did? They gave him a max contract for 2 more years. And everyone, including me, was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing?
Right.
That guy, he's not good anymore. The team isn't good. You're not going anywhere with him on your team. And because they are a mom and pop outfit at the time, and because they are not thinking with tech bro, galaxy brained efficiency spreadsheet mindset, they were like, yeah, we stink and we're going to stink one way or the other. And you know what is worse for us long term? If Kobe Bryant goes and plays for the Bulls for 2 years before he retires, why would we let that happen? Kobe Bryant is our guy. He stays a Laker as long as he's playing basketball. He's a Laker. If he wants to play when he's 58 years old, we give him a max contract. And that way, the story of Kobe Bryant for the rest of time is drafted, traded for, became a Laker, was a Laker at 19, retired a Laker, end of story. And if you go back to the stuff we've been talking about with the Red Sox, if they weren't tech bro, galaxy brain spreadsheet, nonsense, McKinsey consulting, sportsology team now, they would have said that about Mookie. They would have said it about Xander Bogaerts, for better or worse. They would have said it about Devers. They would say it about all these guys. They would say, when we have these guys who are homegrown, who come up with the organization, who become the most popular players in the city, you know what happens? Those guys stay here forever. And maybe that's not the most smart thing in the world. Maybe that is not the most economically efficient thinking. However,
that's the better way to say it.
To reiterate one more time, you don't have to be. You are not the Tampa Bay Rays. You can afford to pay Mookie Betts, a guy whose skill set was pretty clearly going to age well over the court, right? He's not a guy who is, you would think is going to, his body's going to break down or whatever. But even if you did, keeping that guy forever. And if they had the mom and pop attitude that the Lakers had, which is to say, we are stewards of this team. This is our team. This is the city's team. The city loves this guy. This guy is our team. This guy is the city. This guy plays here until he wants to quit. End of story. Then you have Mookie Betts on your team still. And by the way, as you well point out, if this had been the mindset in 2009, David Ortiz would have gone and played for the San Francisco Giants too. Right. And the story would have been 1/1,000,000th as good as it ended up being.
Well, this is, you are now speaking my language. This is something I've been ranting and raving about for many, many, many years. And I bring up the Nationals again, because I say that very specifically. You grew up a Nationals fan in the 2000s. Who did you love? You loved Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
And they could have signed Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper didn't sign for an exorbitantly amount more than they, quote unquote, said they offered him. They could have signed him. He wanted to go back. They could have kept him there forever. Yeah. And okay, yes, I don't know how well he's aged. Of course, he got hurt. I don't know how, the team goes. I don't know what he does to you, like, financially over a long term. The guys who own the teams are some of the richest people there in sports. The Lerner family, they're just bajillionaires. What do they care about the money? If they cared about the organization and they cared about the community, they re-sign Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
But they don't. They don't care, because they're like, oh, you know what? It's probably not money well spent and blah, blah, blah. Okay, good. That's how you run a team, like a business and not like a team. And it drives me insane. And then, of course, trading Juan Soto, because we won't be able to afford him in 3 years anyway. First of all, you don't know that. Second of all, why won't you be able to afford him? And third of all, that's 3 years from now.
Right.
What are you, insane? Are you insane? Juan Soto? Why would you trade Juan Soto at 21 or whatever he was at the time? I
Yeah.
mean, it drives me nuts because it is the perfect example of there's the winning is everything mentality, which I hate because it's not everything. Okay, it's important. We all know that's the goal. It's not everything. Okay, there 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 are 29 teams in baseball that are not going to win, and this season still matters to the fans. It still matters to the people. So that's not. But it's worse than that. It's winning is everything, and we believe this is the only way to win is by being super efficient and by spending less money and by making decisions that will, give us the best chance of never backfiring. I mean, when you take entire emotion out of why why own a team? There are better ways to make money. Why own a team?
Well, number one, I'm actually not sure there are better ways to make money. I don't think
Well,
there's
if
and
you're
I don't think there's
from a safety
I
standpoint,
don't think
yeah.
there's any other large scale asset that is a guaranteed return on investment
No, that's
over
right.
5 years, 10
That's
years,
right.
15 years, 20 years. Like the Bus family bought the Lakers for what it was like $78
Low
million
ball.
or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. And so there aren't better ways to make money. But what's interesting about what you're saying, to put a fine point on this, the Moneyball era back in the late 90s, early 2000s was we are going to maximize efficiency on the field, right?
Yes.
It was like we are going to find market inefficiencies of undervalued skills of players
That's right.
that we can that will allow us to afford those players so we can win as many games as possible. And what has happened in the 20 years since or 25 years since is that it's been perverted
Of
into
course it
we
has.
are going to maximize efficiency in our pockets by
Yes.
saying, yes, maybe Rafael Devers hitting wins us 3 or 5 more games this year,
Yeah.
but in 2032 we're going to the return on investment will have been decreased by 56.4%, and
Right.
so we're going to get out of this now and sacrifice that winning on the field now for dollar savings later. And they cloak it in this idea, as Breslow did, with no, we're actually going to be better this year than we
Yeah.
were last year, or
Yeah.
we were going to be better going forward than we were if we had kept him. And even if that is true,
Yes.
and there's no way to know, but even if that's true, if Devers goes into a terrible slump, which by the way he might, because San Francisco's a really hard place to hit,
It's all a place to hit, but boy, he can hit.
but he can hit. And you would imagine McCovey Cove is going to see its share of Rafael
Yes.
Devers home runs.
Yes.
Even if that's true, the idea that you made that decision for that reason is patently false. You did not do
But
that. That is not why you
it's
did it.
of course not. And not, by the way, the idea that they did this so that they could save money long-term investment in 2032 is BS also. It's that what happens is they're paying Rafael Devers this year 20 whatever, $3 million a year, 25 million, whatever the number is for this year, 30 million. That's money that just goes back into the pocket of John Henry. That's all that is. They're not spending that money on anything else. They're as you pointed out, they're not giving that money to Alex Bregman. Are you kidding
Well,
me?
this
Alex
this is
Bregman's
even the hardliners on my text thread were like, yes, you save that money. Do I trust this group of people to
no.
spend it wisely? No, they haven't really shown. I mean, they traded for Crochet and extended him, right?
Yes.
They have made a couple good deals. They locked up Rafaela, who hasn't really hit yet and might not ever, but is a great defensive center fielder. And they've got
But they
him.
locked him up cheap, though.
They
If
locked him
they
up very cheap.
if they had locked him up for a lot of money, they'd get rid of him.
Yes, they locked up Campbell pretty cheap, and who knows what his
Yeah.
future is. They'll probably try to do the same with Mayer and Anthony, but I don't trust them to make the moves like Dombrowski did when he got
That's
the
right.
guys that he put that
They're
team
not getting
together.
Chris Sale again. They're not doing
I
that.
don't trust. I don't see where JD Martinez is coming in, and they're gonna look if they. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe they will extend Bregman immediately, and maybe they'll make other smart moves. I don't know, but I bristle so much at the idea that this was an on field success. It was not an on field success.
No, and was never intended to be. And the only way I see them extending Bregman in a real way to where Bregman would agree to do it. Bregman's 31 years old,
Yeah,
by the way. I mean,
yeah,
the only way that they do that is if they feel so much pressure from the fans that they feel like they have to.
yeah.
And I got to tell you, I mean, I don't, I certainly don't want to knock anybody on your Red Sox text thread, but I've felt way too many people falling on the Red Sox side in this move. And I think that's very, very poor. I
Well,
really
it's
do.
just
I just think as a
yeah,
Red Sox fan, you need to realize that they're not spending that money. They didn't save that money to do something with it. They saved that money to save that money, period. They treated him like dirt. They kicked him on the way out the door. That guy gave 8 incredible years to the Boston Red Sox, was a super popular player, and they treated him like garbage. And whatever he brought on himself is fine, but that's just a bad organization in my view. That's a
yeah.
bad organizational move.
It's not great. I don't have a ton of faith in the people who are currently at the top of that
No,
organization.
no, I don't
So
think it's
it's a
here. You
bad
can't.
place to be.
All right, one last meaningless thing to end this meaningless thing, and I brought a prop. I don't know if we still put these on videos, but I'm not. If this feels ultra familiar to me, so it's possible that I've brought this up before, but just in case I haven't, we have a lot of these like bag clips at our house, like for potato
Sure,
chips and
sure.
pretzels and all that. These are horrible. What are these? Just where are the clamp style? Like we need the clamp style,
Like a hair clip.
like a hair clip, right? Like this is what do you even like? You have to fold it and put like these should never been invented. We spend a lot of time here on the podcast congratulating the great inventors of our time,
Right.
the inventors of the nail clippers. We tell you that these people are great. This is a terrible. This is for those that are not watching this or even can watch this. What would you even call this?
It's
This
like
is like
it's a V-shaped
bag
plastic
clip
red plastic thing with
from
that
IKEA, apparently.
yeah,
Yeah,
that sort of clips together, and then there's a little kind of extra little flap at the end that wraps
right,
around the bottom of the
right.
clip.
That's
Yeah.
like a little like a
Yeah.
clasp at the end of this thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think they're kind of terrible. Do you guys have these at your house?
No, we always need them. We're constantly. I have two Wolverines that live in my house. One of them is 14 years old, and one of them is 17 years old. And they're just wild Wolverines, and they go into
Yes,
the pantry and they just claw at food containers and rip them open, and then the food kind of spills everywhere, and the Wolverines eat
right.
some of the food, and then they move on to a different part of the house. And I'm constantly searching for, everything goes
You want,
stale immediately, and so I'm constantly searching for clips or ties or
but don't you
something.
want the hair clip, right? You want the little folded clip.
I'll say
Do
that
you like
I,
these?
I I don't mind those. I gotta say,
Oh
I
wow,
think
no,
they're a little the hair clip ones where you sort of press together the top of it and it opens the bottom of it, and then you clip it on. Those are fine, but for a bag of chips, I don't know that it seals it in a way that is fully sealed. I think it kind of like generally keeps the clump of extra bag generally closed, but I think the ones that you're showing there, the V-shaped ones, do work a little better.
Oh, interesting. See, I don't see. I mean, I use them because that's what we have around here. I'm definitely team hair clip or
All right.
whatever
I
that bag
respect
clip is
that.
called. Okay.
My one last meaningless thing is that obviously, as has been pointed out many times by many people, we are moving toward a cashless society here in
Yes,
this
we
world.
are.
And you and I are both of a generation where you carried some cash around in your pocket. You had
Always. Yeah.
had cash, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm at a point in this city where there's very few things I spend cash on, right? It's mostly like tipping a valet
Right.
or a
That's right.
delivery person or whatever.
Yep. It's tips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I would do is I would go to the ATM every however many months, and those months you got more and more time between ATM trips over the years, right? But
Sure.
I would get out, a couple $100, and then it would slowly, because of tipping and because of, you take a ride to the airport and you give the person a tip in the cab or whatever, it would
Right.
slowly decrease. And I would go back. And now I can't tell you the last time. I don't know if I've been to the ATM in 2025. It's
Right.
been
Right.
probably 6 months or something probably since, the holidays when I would tip people, who I needed to tip for the holidays.
Yeah.
Um, and I have, so I the last time, I don't know what I got money out, I got a couple $100 out, and it's been slowly decreasing. And I have $4. I have 4 singles. Here they are. And I've had these $4 for months, literally
Months.
months. I don't like, and every day I wake up and when I head out, I put my watch on.
Yep.
Another thing nobody uses anymore, but I still wear a
Right.
watch every day. I get my wallet, I get my keys, and I get these $4 and I put them in my pocket. And then I come home at the end of the day, having spent none of them, and I put them back on my desk. And
Yeah.
I'm now genuinely curious how long I can go having $4 in my pocket. I think I might have these $4 for the rest of my life.
For the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You might be buried with those $4.
I might die peacefully in my sleep at the age of 102. And when they go through my stuff, they find $4 in my pocket because now even tipping, you go to a valet in LA and they're like, hey, if you want to tip, here's our Venmo thing. And you scan it and you tip on Venmo. I don't know that I'm ever going to get rid of these $4.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. It's not with $4 though. I at some point had gotten $100 bill. I think it was like probably from my parents or something for a birthday gift or something.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm going to carry this $100 bill with me. And whenever I need cash, I'll break it. I'll be like, if I ever needed to pay a valet or whatever, I'll break it. I had that $100 bill for months, just months. At some point, it's like, if you have $100 bill, which used to be, I mean, do you remember the first time you like had 100? Like that was, you were Mr. Monopoly when you had that kind of money. It's worthless if you don't spend it. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm just walking around. It's like walking around with like a piece of paper. Just like, here's this $100 bill I will never, ever spend. And by the way, we are at a point now where what percentage of places take cash? Even like even if you went out sort of like, just sort of your whole goal was to spend the $4 you had. How would you?
I think you'd have to like.
You'd have to go buy gum or something.
Yeah, you could buy some gum, or like if it were in coins, you could go to a parking meter still. Even parking meters take credit cards.
Although very few parking meters are not credit card.
I think it's literally just tips. The only time I exchange cash with anyone is tipping. At this point, it's tipping valets or
and that's got to be people. Of course, we've talked about this before. Sooner or later, everybody's going to have on their name tag just a code, right? Like it'll just be a code, and you just automatically do something. To pay people. So the question: where does this end? Does it
I don't know.
End with them just
I think
stopping making money?
Why don't we do this? Why don't we? We do these irregularly, but every time we do a podcast, I'll give you an update on whether I still have the $4.
Yeah, we need to know exactly what if next week's update is I'm down to $3. We will want to know how it happened.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll keep track. I think it's safe to say let's start the counter at 2 months. It's been more than that, but to be conservative, I've had these $4
so we're
for 2
saying
months.
60 days so far of you carrying $4 every single day.
Every single day in my pocket, safe and sound. No one can get at my $4 unless I decide to give it to them. And we'll see how long I can go.
We will keep track of this. All right, we landed this emergency podcast. We're going to try to get it out in time so it is not completely outdated.
Before the next Rafael Devers trade.
Before the next Rafael Devers trade. So, Mike, as always, thank you.
Thanks for having me.